She was excluded from the mating ceremony until the Alpha King stopped everything for her. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emily Parker stood at the back of the crowded Moonspire Temple, her heart sinking with each passing moment. The mating ceremony had begun, and yet she was still standing there, unseen. She had been excluded. Her scent, her very being, had been deemed unworthy by the Alphas present. It wasn't that she wasn't beautiful, Emily was more than capable of turning heads. But in this world, beauty meant nothing without the strength to back it up. And as an Omega, Emily was not strong. She had always been different. Her wolf had never fully emerged, and the bond that should have been there between her and a mate had never come to fruition. Her fellow Omegas stood proudly at the front of the room, each of them picked, each of them cherished by at least one Alpha. But Emily was left behind, a shadow in the back, waiting for a chance that would never come. As the last Alpha stepped forward, claiming his mate, Emily felt the weight of her failure pressing down on her chest. The whispers from the others around her were deafening. She's not worth it. No wolf would want her. She'll never shift. Emily tried to hold back her tears, but it was difficult. Her hands trembled as she clutched the fabric of her dress, the delicate material feeling like a cage around her. She had always known this day would come, the day when she would be overlooked, the day when she would remain invisible to the very people who were supposed to see her. But the reality of it still stung. And just as she thought she might crumble, she heard a voice. "Is this all that's left of you?" The words were soft but filled with a commanding presence that made her look up. Standing in the doorway, tall and proud, was none other than Alpha King Alexander Thornridge. His dark hair fell in waves around his sharp features, and his piercing silver eyes swept across the room. Every head in the room turned, and the chatter quieted instantly. It was as if the very air shifted when he entered. He was a king, and he commanded attention. The room seemed to breathe in unison, every soul there feeling his presence, feeling the weight of his gaze. "She is mine," Alex declared, his voice echoing through the silent room. Emily's heart skipped a beat as all eyes turned toward her. He had spoken, and with that single statement, everything changed. Emily felt her knees weaken, the world around her spinning. She had been excluded, she had been rejected, but now, she was seen. Alex Thornridge, the Alpha King, had claimed her in front of them all. The murmurs of the crowd began again, this time filled with disbelief. But none of it mattered to Emily. All that mattered was that for the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't the forgotten Omega in the back. She was his. The Alpha King had stopped everything for her. And in that moment, Emily knew that her life was about to change forever. Emily stood frozen as the words echoed in her ears. "She is mine." The Alpha King's voice reverberated throughout the room, silencing the murmurs of disbelief that had started to rise. Every pair of eyes in the Moonspire Temple was on her now, but none of it mattered. All that mattered was the man standing in front of her, the one who had claimed her before the entire pack. She couldn't breathe. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest, and for a second, she thought she might collapse. But then, his eyes met hers. His gaze was intense, sharp, but there was something in it, something she couldn't quite place. It wasn't just the force of a king demanding loyalty. There was a softness, a depth, that made her heart race in a way she couldn't explain. "Come with me," Alex said, his tone commanding, but not unkind. It was as if he was offering her a choice, but the way he said it left no room for refusal. Emily's mind raced. She had been invisible for so long, forgotten by everyone around her, but now, the most powerful man in the room had chosen her. Her legs felt weak beneath her, but somehow, her feet moved, following him as he stepped towards the exit. The whispers continued behind them, but she couldn't focus on them now. The only thing that mattered was the Alpha King walking beside her, leading her out of the temple. The cool night air hit her as they stepped outside, and she inhaled deeply, trying to steady her nerves. Alex didn't speak, but his presence was enough. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, but it wasn't the same as before. This time, it was different. He wasn't judging her. He wasn't looking at her as an omega, a weak and worthless being. No, now he was looking at her as someone important, someone who mattered. As they walked through the grounds of the Moonspire Temple, Emily noticed the way the other wolves watched them. They parted without a word, their eyes lowered in respect. No one dared to challenge the Alpha King, and no one dared to question his decision. It was as if the world had shifted in that moment. She was no longer invisible. She was seen. And Alex Thornridge, the Alpha King, had made her his. They arrived at a large, ornate carriage waiting at the gates. The horses stood still, their breath rising in the cold air. Alex turned to her, his expression unreadable. "This is your new home," he said, gesturing to the carriage. "You will be safe here, no one will harm you." His words were simple, but they held a promise. A promise of protection, of safety, and of a future she had never dared to imagine. Emily hesitated for a moment, the weight of her past still heavy on her shoulders. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something that made her believe. She stepped into the carriage, and Alex followed her, sitting across from her. The door was closed, and they were surrounded by the warmth of the interior. The carriage began to move, and Emily couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. For the first time, someone saw her. As they made their way through the night, Emily tried to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She had been rejected, humiliated, and cast aside by everyone she had ever known. But now, she was being taken somewhere safe. Somewhere she could finally belong. The Alpha King had stopped everything for her. And for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The carriage rolled smoothly through the quiet night, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the cobblestone streets barely breaking the stillness. Emily sat across from Alex, her hands resting nervously in her lap, unsure of what to say or how to behave in the presence of the Alpha King. His eyes were focused on the window, the soft light of the moon casting shadows across his sharp features. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Emily could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of the decision he had made for both of them. She had never imagined this day would come, never imagined that she, the outcast Omega, would be sitting in the same carriage as the most powerful Alpha in the land. But here she was, and somehow, everything felt different. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She wasn't the forgotten Omega in the back. She was his. Her heart raced as she thought about everything that had led up to this moment, the rejection, the humiliation, the fear. It all seemed like a distant memory now. And yet, the question still lingered in her mind, why had he chosen her? Why had Alex, the Alpha King, claimed her in front of everyone? It didn't make sense. "You're wondering why I did it," Alex's voice broke through her thoughts, deep and steady. Emily looked up, surprised to hear him speak. He turned his gaze toward her, his silver eyes locking with hers. "It's not just about the pack," he continued, his tone soft but firm. "It's about you. You deserve more than to be ignored, to be cast aside." Emily swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling deep within her. She had always thought of herself as unworthy, as someone who didn't belong. But in that moment, she realized that Alex saw something in her that she had never seen in herself. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You could have chosen anyone else." Alex leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense but kind. "No, Emily," he said, his voice steady. "I could have chosen anyone, yes. But I chose you. There's something in you, a strength I see, even if you don't see it yourself." She felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, but the doubt still clung to her. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. "What if I'm not enough?" Alex smiled gently, the faintest hint of a reassuring grin. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you." Emily's heart fluttered in her chest at the sincerity in his voice. She had always been told she wasn't enough, not strong enough, not important enough. But Alex, the Alpha King, didn't see her as weak. He didn't see her as nothing. He saw her as someone who could stand beside him. The carriage began to slow as they neared their destination. Emily looked out the window, the silhouette of a large, imposing mansion coming into view. The estate was vast, its darkened windows reflecting the moonlight like cold, watchful eyes. "This is where you'll stay," Alex said as the carriage pulled up to the grand entrance. The servants were already waiting, the doors opening as they approached. Emily felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. She had never been in a place like this, never been treated with such care. As the carriage came to a stop, Alex stepped out first and extended his hand to her. She hesitated for a moment, then took it. His touch was firm, but warm. As they walked toward the entrance together, Emily realized that everything had changed. She was no longer the invisible Omega. She was seen. She was chosen. And in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new, something that could change everything. The grand doors of the mansion swung open as Alex led Emily inside, and she couldn't help but feel both awe and unease in the presence of such opulence. The entrance hall was vast, with high ceilings that seemed to stretch on forever, filled with the soft glow of chandeliers. Marble floors reflected the soft light, and intricate tapestries adorned the walls, telling stories of battles long past. She had never seen anything like it before, and it made her feel small and out of place. But as Alex turned to her, his gaze softening, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. "Welcome home," he said simply, his voice carrying an unexpected warmth. It was strange to hear those words from him, especially after everything that had happened. She had spent her entire life being made to feel unwanted, ignored, and now here she was, standing in a place that felt like it belonged to someone far more important than her. "This is your home now, Emily," Alex continued, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet intensity. "No one will ever make you feel less than again." Emily opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say to that. She had always doubted her worth, always believed that she was invisible to the world. But standing here, in this grand mansion, with Alex standing beside her, she felt something stir within her. Maybe, just maybe, she could believe him. The silence between them was comforting, not awkward. He didn't try to fill it with unnecessary words, and Emily appreciated that. She followed him further into the mansion, her footsteps echoing softly in the vast hall. They passed through a series of grand rooms, each one more impressive than the last, until they reached a set of large double doors. Alex pushed them open, revealing a spacious room with a large four-poster bed at the center. The room was beautifully decorated, with dark wood furniture and a warm, inviting atmosphere. "This is where you'll sleep," Alex said, his voice gentle. Emily stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. She could hardly believe it. She had never had a room like this before. A room of her own, a place where she could rest, feel safe, and not be judged. "I know it's not much," Alex said, noticing the look on her face. "But I wanted you to feel comfortable here." Emily turned to him, her heart swelling with a mixture of emotions. "It's perfect," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." Alex gave her a small smile, then nodded toward the bed. "You should get some rest. It's been a long day." Emily hesitated, then nodded in agreement. She was exhausted, her body aching from the events of the day. But she wasn't sure how to sleep in this new place, how to settle into a life that seemed so far removed from everything she had known. But with Alex's presence in the room, something in her began to calm. She could do this. She could start over. She lay down on the bed, pulling the covers over herself, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to close her eyes and drift off to sleep. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like maybe it could be something good. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft, golden rays across the room. Emily slowly opened her eyes, the warmth of the sunlight washing over her skin. For a moment, she simply lay there, her body still adjusting to the reality of the night before. The soft, familiar weight of the blankets wrapped around her, and she could hear the faint sound of birds chirping outside. She had never known such peace. It was a strange feeling, one she wasn't accustomed to. The weight of her past had always followed her, but now, in this place, it felt lighter. She turned her head and looked toward the window, her heart swelling with a mixture of emotions. She was no longer an outcast. She was no longer the invisible Omega, lost in a world that didn't care. Alex had changed that. With a deep breath, she slowly sat up, the events of the previous day rushing back to her. The moment she had stepped into the mansion, the moment Alex had claimed her, it was all still fresh in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that had settled in her chest. How had she, of all people, been chosen? She was just Emily Parker, the quiet, overlooked Omega. But Alex had seen something in her, something no one else had ever bothered to look for. A knock on the door broke her thoughts, and she turned her head to see Alex standing in the doorway, his expression as calm and unreadable as ever. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and smooth. Emily smiled softly, surprised at how much his presence comforted her. "Good morning," she replied, her voice still thick with sleep. "How did you sleep?" Alex asked, stepping into the room. His presence filled the space, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was reassuring, like a steady anchor in a world that had always seemed too chaotic. "I slept well," Emily said, her gaze meeting his. "Better than I've ever slept." Alex nodded, his gaze softening for a moment before he cleared his throat. "I'm glad to hear that. You deserve peace." Emily felt her heart skip a beat at his words. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever told her that she deserved peace. It was a simple statement, but it carried so much weight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. There was a long pause, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily could feel the tension building between them, a strange, unspoken connection that neither of them could deny. She wasn't sure what to make of it, but she knew one thing: she wasn't alone anymore. Alex was here, with her. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she might just be enough. "I was thinking," Alex began, breaking the silence, "we should take a walk. There's a garden outside. It might help you clear your mind." Emily nodded slowly, the idea sounding perfect. "That sounds nice," she said, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. As she stood up, Alex offered her a hand, and she took it without hesitation. His touch was warm and firm, a contrast to the uncertainty she had always felt. Together, they walked out of the room and down the long hallway, past grand portraits and intricate tapestries. The mansion was beautiful, but Emily was starting to realize that it wasn't the walls or the furniture that made it feel like home. It was the person standing beside her. As they reached the garden, Emily took a deep breath, the scent of fresh flowers and damp earth filling her senses. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the calmness of the moment wash over her. When she opened her eyes, she found Alex watching her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "It's peaceful here," Emily said softly, her voice carrying a sense of wonder. Alex nodded, his smile growing. "I thought you might like it." They stood there for a while, the sounds of nature around them creating a soothing melody. Emily had never imagined that something like this could exist in her life. It was a world she had never known, a world where she could feel safe, where she could feel seen. And as she stood beside Alex, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was where she was meant to be. As the days passed in the mansion, Emily began to settle into a routine, one that she had never known before. The once overwhelming grandeur of the estate was slowly becoming familiar, and with each passing moment, the sense of peace that had eluded her for so long grew stronger. The mansion was filled with sounds she never expected, the laughter of the servants as they went about their duties, the soft hum of life continuing around her. Yet, it was the presence of Alex that made everything feel real. Every interaction with him was a reminder that she was no longer invisible. He made her feel seen, valued in a way no one ever had before. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Alex invited her to join him in the library. The massive room was lined with towering shelves, filled with books that seemed to stretch endlessly into the high ceiling. Emily had always loved reading, but it was something she had given up long ago. There had never been the time or the space for such luxuries. But here, in the safety of the library, she felt the old spark of curiosity reignite. "Would you like to read with me?" Alex asked, his voice gentle as he motioned to the comfortable chairs by the fire. Emily hesitated, a nervous flutter in her chest. "I haven't read in a long time," she confessed, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the armrest. "It's been so long, I'm not sure where to begin." Alex smiled, a soft, understanding smile that made her feel at ease. "There's no rush. We can take it slow. I'll help you." He walked over to the shelves and pulled down a book, handing it to her. It was an old, leather-bound volume, its pages yellowed with age. Emily took it in her hands, feeling the weight of history in her grasp. "This one is a favorite of mine," Alex said, settling into the chair beside her. "It's about courage, about finding strength even in the darkest of times. It's been my companion for years." Emily opened the book, her fingers brushing over the pages. The words seemed to come alive as she read, each one speaking to her in a way that was both familiar and new. She hadn't realized how much she missed the comfort of stories, the escape they offered from her own life. As the evening wore on, they read together, the fire crackling in the hearth as the soft murmur of their voices filled the room. It felt like something she had longed for: connection, peace, and understanding. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The days that followed brought more moments of quiet comfort, and with each passing moment, Emily began to feel something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: hope. She still didn't fully understand why Alex had chosen her, why he had claimed her in front of the pack. But as she spent more time with him, she started to realize that maybe, just maybe, she didn't need to have all the answers. Maybe it was enough to simply be with him, to feel seen and appreciated, something she had never experienced before. She had been given a chance to start over, to be more than just the rejected Omega. And with Alex by her side, she felt like she could finally embrace that chance. It was a slow process, but with each day, Emily grew stronger. She was no longer just the girl who had been cast aside. She was more than that now. She was someone who mattered, someone whose worth was not defined by the opinions of others. And as she looked at Alex, his steady presence comforting her, she realized that this was just the beginning of her new life. The days were becoming more familiar now, each one blending into the next with a comforting rhythm. Emily spent her time exploring the mansion's gardens, reading with Alex by the fire, and becoming acquainted with the quiet but steady presence that was now a part of her life. Though she had spent years feeling like she didn't belong here, in the sanctuary of the mansion, she was beginning to realize that she did. She belonged. And in a way, Alex was the reason. Every day with him brought new realizations about herself, about what she was capable of, and what it meant to be seen for the first time. They had shared quiet moments of reading together, but today, as Emily walked through the lush gardens outside, she felt a subtle shift within herself. It had been a few weeks since Alex had made her his, and she was slowly starting to see herself differently. Her steps were lighter, and the weight of rejection, though still present in the back of her mind, no longer consumed her. Alex had helped her find a sense of peace she never thought was possible. As she wandered through the blooming flowers, a small part of her heart felt lighter. She was learning to enjoy these moments, to embrace the calm that surrounded her. Alex had promised her safety and security, and he had kept his word. No one dared to treat her as she had been treated before. No one saw her as invisible. As she passed by the fountain, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Alex walking toward her, a gentle smile on his face. "You seem peaceful today," he remarked, his voice low and warm. Emily smiled back, feeling the weight of his words settle into her. She had never thought of herself as peaceful, not before meeting him. But today, there was a sense of calm that filled her, one that she had never known. "I am," she replied softly. "I never imagined I would feel like this." Alex stopped beside her, his presence steady and grounded. "You deserve it," he said, his gaze softening. "I know it's been difficult for you, but you're here now. And you're not going anywhere." His words were a promise, and they brought a sense of relief to Emily's chest. She had spent years fighting to be seen, fighting to matter, and now, standing beside him, she was beginning to believe it. She did matter. Alex extended his hand to her, and without thinking, she took it, feeling the warmth of his touch spread through her. They stood together in the garden for a while, taking in the peaceful surroundings. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt like she was truly home. She had been given a second chance at life, and with Alex by her side, she wasn't sure where it would lead, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't afraid anymore. The quiet moments of peace they shared together were becoming more frequent, and Emily could feel herself becoming more confident, more comfortable in her own skin. Alex had shown her what it meant to be seen, to be valued, and in return, she was learning to believe in herself again. As they walked back toward the mansion, Emily realized that the future wasn't as scary as it once seemed. She was no longer the outcast. She was Emily Parker, and she had a place in this world, a place where she was loved, respected, and above all, where she belonged. As the weeks passed, Emily settled into the life she had once thought was impossible. The mansion, once a symbol of unfamiliarity and distance, was now a place where she felt at ease, where she could walk through the halls and feel the comfort of belonging. Alex had given her a home, not just in the sense of a physical space, but in the truest sense of the word. He had given her a place in his life, a place in his world. And with each passing day, Emily found herself growing more confident in this new life she had been given. One afternoon, as they sat together in the garden, the air warm and filled with the scent of blooming flowers, Alex turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You've changed," he said, his voice gentle. Emily looked up from the book she had been reading, meeting his gaze. "I feel different," she admitted, the words coming easily now. "I've never known peace like this before. I've never known what it feels like to just exist without fear." Alex smiled, a small but genuine curve of his lips that made something in Emily's chest flutter. "You deserve peace, Emily. You deserve to be happy." The sincerity in his words made her heart swell, and she felt a warmth spread through her. She had always believed that her happiness was out of reach, something she could only dream of but never attain. But now, standing here, with Alex by her side, she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, happiness was something she could have. As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself more at ease in the company of others in the mansion. She had been introduced to the staff, and though they were formal and respectful, there was a kindness in their interactions that made her feel like she was truly part of the family. Alex had insisted that she take part in the activities that she once thought were beyond her reach, from joining in the quiet dinners to attending the gatherings that took place within the mansion's walls. Though she had never been one to enjoy large crowds, she found herself more comfortable in these settings, no longer feeling out of place. And with Alex's constant support, she learned to step out of the shadows of her past and embrace the life she was now living. One evening, as they sat together by the fire in the library, Emily turned to Alex with a curious expression. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret choosing me, I mean." Alex's gaze softened, and he reached over, taking her hand in his. "I never regretted it," he said simply, his voice steady. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be here. I knew you were meant to be with me." His words, so straightforward yet filled with such depth, left Emily speechless. She had never imagined anyone, especially someone as powerful as Alex, could feel that way about her. But as she looked into his eyes, she knew he meant every word. She wasn't just an omega to him. She wasn't just someone he had chosen out of obligation or convenience. She was his. And that realization filled her with a sense of purpose she had never known. As the fire crackled between them, Emily allowed herself to smile, truly smile, for the first time in what felt like forever. She had found a place where she belonged, and more than that, she had found someone who cared for her, who saw her for who she was, not for what she was. And as the night deepened around them, Emily knew that her life, the life she had once thought was over, was only just beginning. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's life at the mansion with Alex began to feel like a dream. The fear and doubt she had carried for so long slowly faded, replaced by a quiet confidence she never thought she'd have. Alex, the Alpha King, was no longer just her protector, he was her partner, her equal, and in the quiet moments they shared together, Emily knew that what they had was something rare and beautiful. Their days were simple yet meaningful. They spent time together in the gardens, reading, talking, and enjoying the peace that now filled their lives. Alex never rushed her. He never pushed her to be something she wasn't. Instead, he allowed her to grow, to find herself in a way that had always been denied to her. One afternoon, as they sat together by the fountain, Emily found herself gazing at the water, lost in thought. "I never imagined this would be my life," she said softly, almost to herself. Alex, who had been quietly watching her, turned his gaze toward her. "What did you imagine?" he asked, his voice gentle but curious. Emily paused, thinking back to the years of rejection, of feeling invisible and worthless. "I don't know," she replied slowly. "I guess I never really thought there was a place for me, not in this world, not in a world where strength is everything." Alex reached out and took her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "You've always had a place, Emily. You just needed someone who could see you, someone who could recognize your worth." Emily looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. He had shown her, in every quiet moment, that she was worth something, that she was enough. "I don't think I could have ever seen it without you," she whispered. Alex smiled, his eyes soft with understanding. "You're stronger than you think," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "And I've always seen you." The weight of his words sank into her, and for the first time in her life, Emily felt like she could finally breathe. She didn't have to prove anything. She didn't have to be someone else. She was enough, just as she was. The sound of footsteps on the gravel path interrupted their quiet moment, and Emily turned to see one of the servants approaching. She smiled politely, but inside, she felt a sense of pride. She had a place here, in this world that had once seemed so far out of reach. "There's someone here to see you, my lady," the servant said, bowing slightly. Emily glanced at Alex, who gave her a reassuring nod. "Who is it?" she asked. "A visitor from the pack, my lady. They've arrived with a message for the Alpha King." Emily felt a strange flutter in her chest at the mention of the pack. She hadn't seen anyone from her past since she had come to the mansion, and the thought of reconnecting with them brought a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. "I'll meet them in the drawing room," Alex said, standing up. He turned to Emily, his gaze soft. "Come with me." Emily nodded, feeling a little unsure, but also excited to see where this new chapter of her life would lead. As they walked through the halls of the mansion, Alex's presence beside her was a steady comfort. She was no longer the girl who had been discarded. She was no longer the outcast. She was Emily Parker, and she had a future filled with possibilities. They reached the drawing room, and Emily's breath caught as she saw the figure standing by the window. A familiar face, one she hadn't seen in years. It was her mother's cousin, and her heart skipped a beat as she wondered what message they had brought from the pack. Alex placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her the support she had come to rely on. "We'll take this one step at a time," he said quietly. Emily nodded, her heart racing, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready for whatever came next. With Alex by her side, she knew she could face anything.